Hey fun fans! We're giving away a Devastator 3 keyboard and mouse combo courtesy of Cooler Master on YouTube for this month of June. All you have to do to enter is subscribe to Fun's YouTube channel and leave a comment on which state or region you think will be the next to go to districts. You can enter once per upload and we'll pick a winner near the end of June.
But right now, we are going to move on back in time. That's right. I'm going to hop in a DeLorean and pull out Doctor Strange's Time Stone, and we're going to head back to the 2012 competition, and it's Rebound Rumble. And Rebound Rumble was one of my favorite games of the past years. Actually, when I started doing some research about what match I wanted to cover, I started watching a bunch of 2012 matches, and I was like, wait a second. I remember I kind of hated this game. Why do I like it so much now? And then I remembered, oh, I'm just watching elimination matches. The qualification matches were stupid. And so we'll get into that. But why this game I thought was so great was it was just so simple to follow from an audience perspective. Score more baskets than your opponents. That's basically the whole game. You get bonus points for balancing a bridge. And it was super simple. The terrible quals dynamic that was, there was a co-op bridge. And so there were 4 ranking points available in each match. 2 points for a win, 1 point for a tie, 0 for a loss. But you got 2 extra ranking points if you and your opponent could balance the center bridge together. So it seems like, oh, well, that should be easy enough to do. And it was easy enough to do, except people realized there was a huge way to game the system, because sometimes it was advantageous to make sure your opponent didn't get those bonus points, so you could refuse to co-op with them. And then even more so, the political games came into play, where teams were telling other teams not to co-op with them. Teams were threatening teams. There was all sorts. It was a freaking disaster. So like, think about like the match throwing that happens now, and add in another dynamic that encouraged match throwing in a way, and it was a mess, and it really took away from what was a great game. But once we got to the elims, this game was awesome. So, yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to cover this one. And so I figured if we were going to go back to 2012, I think we should cover maybe arguably one of the best robots of all time. And we're going to get that to a second. But this match we're going to do is finals match number 2 from the. No, Tyler, I think I messed you up. Oh.
I think it was, no, I thought it was Finals 1. I'm pretty sure I watched it. I think it's Finals 1, but I could be wrong.
I'm going to just double check everything right here to make sure we're covering the right match. Our producer Tyler did a great job of adding an overlay to this match because we didn't have the real-time scoring available, and he did all that work, and I may have made him do the wrong match because I'm a moron. Yeah, it's definitely finals match number 2. So I will keep talking right now and kill time to fix the mess that I created for our producer, because I am an idiot. So this is a real all-star match, unlike this analysis. The Blue Alliance, now get this alliance right here, and I think, Pauline, you'll probably appreciate this most being from California, features 1323, the Madtown Robotics, 254, the Cheesy Poops, and 3309, the Friar Bots. So if that alliance was put together in 2017 or 2018, you would assume that someone was sandbagging, because like that just wouldn't happen. Going back in time, the Friar Bots were a lot younger. They were still developing, and so that's why they were available at that point. They weren't at that 1323 level yet in their career. 254 was 254. They were awesome in 2012. A typically great robot. However, at this event, they struggled a little bit because there was a few factors that affected them. One, they were tripping their main breaker, so that hurt their ranking. Number 2, some teams were refusing to co-op with them because they didn't want the Cheesy Poops to seed high, because teams are jerks, and so that was a factor. And also at a certain point, once 254 realized they weren't going to be seeding in the top 8, co-oping wasn't a high priority of them, so they were focused on getting their robot ready and making a show for elims. I think it looks like we're in good shape with this, and we're going to have the right match for you guys to watch. Perfect. Hey, everything is looking good right now. So for the Blue Alliance, another all-star alliance, we had Team 330, the Beach Bots, who had a great robot that had an interesting strategy where they would elevate really high and get really, really close to the goal to make for a super short shot. Team 2102, who could play some decent fender defense, and then, of course, the team that we're here to talk about today, Team 1717, the Penguineers. So 1717, they stopped doing first after the 2015 season, and they were a really interesting team for those of you who don't know, where their entire team consisted only of grade 12 students, or seniors as you call them in the US. And the FRC team was a class project. So this group of like 25 or 30 kids for the whole year worked on this robot, and no other kids in the school worked on it. So it was their robot. And they did some crazy things every year. But in 2012, and so like remember, these kids are rookies basically every year. Now a lot of them went to events and like they knew what first was. They thought like they were coming in blank, but they, you know, this is their first time really being on a team. Arguably, like I could say that this is one of the greatest robots of all time, and maybe definitely on my list of the greatest robots to never win championship. That's up there with Team 47 in 1998 with the first ever Swerve, 469 in 2010 with their great robot that kind of had a chokehold on funneling the balls, and the 1114 in 2013. And so like these are some of the greatest robots, but that lost the championships for various reasons. What made 1717 so great, as you're watching video of them right now, is just, well, first of all, their Swerve drive, 4 independent modules, just went in whatever direction they wanted to go at any point. They had a double-sided intake, so they could intake balls on the left or on the right. They could swerve. So basically, wherever there was a ball, they would get at it right away. And they had a crazy vision-activated turret that could just lock on from everywhere. There's video of them on YouTube, of them hitting 100 shots in a row. Like, I remember the other day I was watching a video of a robot built by Toyota to shoot free throws, and like it missed a shot here or there. I'm like, you know, it's not as good as 1717, you know. And so like it's just kind of crazy to think about how great that robot was a work of art. If for those of you who aren't familiar with the 2012 game and want to think of a modern equivalent, like the closest equivalents would be from 2016. 5172 and 1241, who both rarely ever missed shots, but they both had that high point shooter with a turret that could shoot from multiple angles. And like what was so good about 1717 was so many teams in 2012 had one spot they'd like to shoot from. There were key shooters, or there were fender shooters. 1717, it didn't matter. They could be anywhere on the field and they would shoot. So like this robot was awesome. They were the number one seed at the event, and they could have picked 254 or 330. And they picked 330. As the story goes, and who knows what the real reason is.
So but as the story goes,
yeah, exactly. You know, 'cause like I wasn't there for this one, I can't say. 1717 agreed that 254 was the second best robot at the event, but they decided they wanted to pick 330 because they wanted to make sure 330 qualified for champs. This was a late event, maybe a week 5 or a week 6 event, and this was before the wildcard era. So if you didn't win, you weren't going to champs. And they wanted to make sure 330 got to champs, and so that's why they picked them. Now, other people say, well, no, they just picked 330 because they were the number 2 seed while the Poofs were way down there. And so, but at the same time, in my opinion, the Poofs were definitely the second best robot at that event. And why I would pick them over 330 is because the Poofs were more versatile in that they could score from multiple locations, and they didn't depend on scoring it from the fender like 330 did, which we're going to see how that plays in. 330's robot that year was nicknamed Skyhook, which was actually the name of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's go-to move in the NBA, the Skyhook. And so when Kareem came to first champs that year, they made sure that he got to see a robot which was named after his shot, which is like pretty freaking cool. Like that's a pretty awesome synergy here. So enough talk about all that. Let's get ready to watch this match. So I want to remind everyone here how scoring worked in this game. And another reason I love this game, the scoring is super simple. So baskets in the high goal are worth 6 points. In auto, 3 points in teleop. If you get one robot on your bridge at the end of the match, it's worth 10 points. 2 is worth 20. 3 is worth 40. That's it. That's all that comes to. We don't actually have real-time scoring available in this match, but I could watch this match and keep score in my head, which is a hallmark of a good game. So I think it is time to get started, and we're going to dive right in. Yeah, we're going to find out if this is the right match, and we'll see. If not, you know, we're going to figure some stuff out. But let's jump right into the autonomous period here. And so each robot started with 2 balls to start the match, and we see shots going off. And 1717 missed shots in auto here, which is kind of weird because they didn't really miss shots ever in general. But it's like a fairly standard auto mode here. Both alliances kind of do poorly, and we're going to pause right now at the end of auto, and I'm going to reset the scene. And both teams went 3 for 6 in auto, so the match is tied 18-18 at the end of auto. So let's go into this and see what happens. And we start the match here, and we keep going. And Tyler, we do have the right match. I'm going to pause right here. We see that 330 is dead on the field. So this exciting match that we were talking about, 330 and 1717 versus 254 and 1323, it's now 1717 on their own. To make things worse, 1717's third robot cannot score. So 1717 is going to have to do all the scoring here. Their third robot, 2102, can play some defense. So, like, let's go into the mindset of someone who's been doing FRC, like, through, like, ever, but, like, especially the last couple of years. And you are playing the Cheesy Poops, and you're playing 1323, you're playing them together. So you're already terrified. And then you realize that your number one pick overall is not moving for the rest of the match. You think you're basically done. But this is how good 1717 was, guys. Just watch. Because they literally just start scoring everything. Pick up 3 balls, drive to a spot, boom, boom, boom. And they go again. They don't have to really turn much to get these balls. If there's a ball near them, they just kind of zigzag their way in there. 3309 comes down to the blue side of the field to play some defense, but here's the thing, and we're going to watch how they play defense. They park themselves in front of the fender, which has no effect on 1717 because they're just going to shoot from the key. They'll shoot from distance. So let's pause things again right here because I want to chat a little bit about defense. So 3309, I'm assuming their pre-match plan was they were probably told, hey, 1717, we can't defend them. Like, you can't bother trying to defend them. They're too good. We need to shut down 330 to even this thing up. And so what you're going to do is sit at the fender and don't let 330 get to the fender. Great plan. That would absolutely shut down 330. However, since 330 isn't moving, 3309 probably should have adapted. And maybe 254 or 1323 should have called them off. But this is one of those like times where typically teams and behave in very static manners during matches, and they don't make mid-match changes, and so it's hard. But this is one where a mid-match change could have helped. At the same time, I don't know if anyone was going to slow down 1717. So let's just keep watching. We see on the other side of the field 2102 trying to get to the fender because 1323 only scores from the fender, and they do a nice job of slowing 1323 down as 1717 just keeps scoring some balls, and we just keep the numbers going up. I'm going to give you some context on these numbers after the match, but we're at the halfway point right now, and it's a pretty even match right now score-wise. I think it's like 9-8 on shots, and then the Poops kind of even it up, and then 17-17 goes here. And so now let's pause things for a second, and we look at the Red Alliance side of the field. There's barely any balls left, and the any balls that are there are kind of right at 330's robots, so hard for 1717 to get to. So it looks like 1717 is going to have to make a trip to the other side of the field. This is really the Blue Alliance's chance, because you really have to make a decision like, let's keep 1717 from getting back across the field, and let's lock them down. It's kind of like this year when a team started doing portal cycles. That was your chance to pin them and lock them up on your side of the field. This is what needs to happen here. But 1717, like, look how flawless this is. And, like, there were very few teams that were really good at going to the other side of the field that year. 2056, 1114, 2826 were really good at it. 1717, as they show here, is. But most teams kind of stayed on their own side of the field. So as things keep going, and we see 1717. And, like, that's a swerve drive that's hopping over a 4-inch barrier. So, like, that's in itself is crazy. And we're coming towards the end game here. Most teams right now would be starting their last cycle. And you can even see the Blue Alliance has started to balance already because, 30-second mark. So let's pause it again here. We're at the 30-second mark. The 30-second mark is typically when teams start their balancing procedure. And that would be it for shooting. Right now, when we get to the 30-second mark, this match is tied 51-51. And the Blue Alliance is going to go to get a double balance. They're basically saying we're going to get to 71 points. That's all we're going to do here. And so 1717 has a decision. Most teams at this point would just go balance. But 1717 knew how good they were at scoring, and they thought that they could definitely always make up the points that balancing would bring by scoring in the last few seconds of the match. So let's watch these last 30 seconds and 1717. And so they come down here, and they got 3 balls, and bang, bang, bang. They basically need 4 to win here, and they've already got 3. And, like, this is – so they grab some more. Bang, bang, bang. And there's still time. And why not get another ball? Why not? Why not go for it? Boom. 18 balls they made that match. And that wins the match. So let's just talk about this final score here. They win 82-71. It was 51-51 when things ended, when we got to the 30-second mark. Blue Alliance goes to balance for their 20 points. Red Alliance gets 10 points from their single balance, and then another 21 points from the ball score. They scored 7 balls in the last 30 seconds. So some context here, because numbers don't mean anything without context. The best teams in the world at the championship, when we talked about the two best ball-scoring teams that I have data on, the Archimedes division, were 2056 and 2826. They were averaging about 7.5 balls per match at the championship. We just saw 17-17 score 7 balls in 30 seconds. At the championship across the Archimedes division, the average balls per match, 2.5. We just saw 17-17 score 18 balls in a match. Again, looking at the division which I have data, Archimedes, there were only 4 teams which managed to score more than 9 balls in a match once. 11-14, 67, 20-56, 28-26. And the max in that division was 12. 17-17, we just watched them score 18 balls in a match. Like, they are at least 2 standard deviations above what the top teams were doing. The last time we saw ball scoring dominance like that, 469 in 2010, 11-14 in 2008. This was literally one of the greatest robots in FRC history. I mean, the paradigm for everyone was you just balance at the end of the match, and not for these guys. And remember, they were able to do this with 330 being dead. If 330 was alive, they would have scored some balls, and they would have double balanced with 2102. So even if the Blue Alliance had a triple balance on deck, and where you were getting 20 extra balancing points, the 21 points they were getting from shooting was more. Like, it was just amazing how good 17-17 was. And I mean, and I'm sure that someone is going to ask right now, well, how come they didn't win championship? And I hate to break it to you guys, they didn't get to win championship because they got hacked by a team. So that's why they didn't win championship. They were one of the teams who got hacked. They were hacked before Einstein, before 11-14 and 2056 got hacked. But in my opinion, if that doesn't happen, 17-17 and 469 either win championship or play 11-14 and 2056 in what would be one of the craziest finals ever. But this robot was a work of art. So let's take some audience questions. Let's see what we have. I can talk about whatever. So what questions do we have, guys?
I think a lot of people don't know what the hacking thing was because it was long ago, and last time I tried to find it on First's website, it wasn't there.
Yeah, so we did a show on this earlier in the year, one of our first Candidly Speaking episodes. Maybe it was our first episode, but Einstein was hacked by a mentor from one of the teams who was on Einstein, and that person also most likely, and the 17-17 one, first didn't do any investigations beyond Einstein, but most likely, based on the evidence that we've seen, hacked 17-17 in the elims of their division, because the team that the hacker was on was in that division as well. And so it was, it was not good. So like you feel those.
It's the only time I've ever seen a permaban come down from, First, right, where this guy is not allowed, to come back in any capacity.
He is banned from First from life. But hey, he works for SpaceX now. So I mean, bad things happen to shitty people sometimes. So I mean, good things happen.
I was like,
Sorry, I'm getting bitter. But yeah, if there's any other questions, we can talk about it. I don't want to dive too much into the hacking because we've talked about it a lot, and it's another story. But
you can also find out, if you want to look it up. I'm sure there's Delphi threads. At least there's several Delphi threads.
The Einstein report is available on the First website as well. Yeah. One of the things I want to talk about also is, and PJ can talk to this too. 2767 has won the last 2 world championships for Michigan, and they've really kind of perfected Swerve. But I mean, I don't think their perfection of Swerve happens without innovators like 1717, who led the Swerve development. Like when I think of the pioneers of Swerve, I think of Chief Delphi Team 47 back in 1998 with Joe Johnson. I think of the iterations that Wild Staying Team 111 did with Raul Oliveira. And then I think going forward to 2012, I think about what Amir and 1717 did. And now I think 2767 is clearly like the leaders in first. And also like Team 16, the Baxter Bomb Squad has done some great stuff. But like those are the legends of Swerve from year to year.
I agree. And I've looked, the one interaction I had with 1717 was I reffed their division in 2013. And from looking at that robot and the amount of time I spent looking at it, because it was amazing, and then the amount of time I've reffed, I've obviously interacted with 2767 much more. The Swerve is very similar. Like you can definitely see, I definitely agree, 1717 had to be a huge influence because you can see it in their Swerve designs. Like
and 1717 also puts so much stuff online, so you guys can look around to see this sort of stuff. And so, Pauline, this year at Champs, you played with a Swerve team. So you want to talk about like how that changes your strategy when you have a team that can control a Swerve really well on your alliance?
Sure. Well, for us, we were with 1323, and I've actually never built a Swerve. I've never driven a Swerve, so
Swerve is terrifying.
I'm terrified of them. I know how to build a West Coast drive, and that's pretty much it. But I was super excited because both 1323 and 3476 were scale bots, and we needed to find a way to make both of our teams able to score on the scale. And so what 1323 allowed 3476 to do was pick up those cubes and come around and swoop so fast because of that Swerve. While we had to come back, get in place, back up on the wall and drive forward, they just were swooping. And every time we were lining up, they could fill in because they just were driving all over the place. And that's really the benefit of Swerve, and why, if you can do Swerve well and you have if you can do Swerve well, don't try it if you can't. It's a benefit to all teams.
From personal experience, don't ever decide to do a Swerve without having ever built one in the off season.
Yes.
Because that did not work out for 9-10 in 2015.
Well, and what you'll find happening, since we're just talking about Swerve, is that so many teams build Swerves and then they never drive it sideways because their drivers are like, it's a little bit slower going sideways. It's a little bit harder to control, and they're just going to do what's natural. And then you've just wasted all those resources on a Swerve that doesn't go sideways. It's the same thing with like Mecanum bots. Like people build them and then they some teams spend hundreds of dollars or like thousands of dollars on Mecanum wheels, but then they program it in tank drive because they didn't know that you had to program it. I'm not even going to start my Mecanum rant right now. Like I'm not here for. But 1717 Swerve drive was a work of art, and like I don't know, like this team was just so cool, and like PJ, you talked about your interactions with them. Pauline, what were your interactions with 1717 like?
I was actually at this regional in 2012. I was a sophomore in high school. So seeing that match was actually insane. And we always saw 1717 back when I was a student, and we were kind of afraid of them because they are really intense. They show up in black jumpsuits. They build their entire robot at competition. That was the craziest part to me. Like you walk in to a regional on that Thursday, the robot is just a drive base, and by Thursday night, it's an entire robot with the whole stock of Banebot wheels in existence. Like, it's actually insane how quickly. We were always scared of them, but they were just so good. They were just one of those really dominating teams on the field that, like, you looked up to them. And that same year, they had an open house up where they are in, like, Santa Barbara or whatever, and I got up there and got to play with their Swerve and their turret and everything, and it was sick. It was just so cool. I'm so sad they're not a team anymore, but definitely a team we always look back to for inspiration. If I ever want to build a Swerve, I'm going to look at 1717.
Well, I mean, 1717 is definitely one of those teams when you get the new game at kickoff, you kind of want to be like, okay, what old games is this similar to? And what has 1717 done in those games? Like the same way that you look at 254, and, you look at 67, like 1717 is one of those teams. A question here, we probably should have explained this one. What happened to 1717 is the question from chat. Pauline, do you want to take that one? Because I don't really know.
Sure.
Like I know what I've read on Chief, but I don't know anything more than that.
So 1717 was, like Karthik explained earlier, a team that just had seniors on it, and they were part of the engineering academy at Dos Pueblos High School 3 years before. So your freshman to junior year, you were focusing on training, basically to join 1717 is how that worked. So their senior project was essentially building a robot for that game. They had one season, which is weird, crazy, by the way, that they could do Swerve with like a driver every season changing. That's just insane. Anyways, they decided that they wanted a different senior project that kind of would be all year round, more than just the 6-week field season and the competition season. So they disbanded 1717. If you go to their shop still, they still have all the robots, all the tools. They still do a little bit of first. Even some of their members, I know once they, like when they were freshmen to juniors, some of the members actually went on to make a different FRC team and FTC teams.
I was going to say, didn't they compete in 2016 with a rookie number like that school?
Yeah, so like a bunch of their members kind of left because they wanted to do FRC and made their own teams. I remember I was judging FTC, the only time I've ever been to an FTC event, and they were like, "Oh, we're from Dos Pueblos High," and I was like, "Wait a second, hold up." But they disbanded, and then they have this new senior project. But you could still find a bunch of their stuff online. They still share all their resources. They're just not specifically FRC related anymore. But they were a fantastic team. Just like if you ever have a new student join, or you know people on your team that don't know 1717, show them the robot, because it's always jaw dropping just going back to those videos.